Today is absolutely huge for the markets. We need to talk about it. I am Dr. Stock, Doctor of Education. And do you know what piece of clothing makes you want to sneeze? A shoe. All right, I have 2 ETFs and 3 stocks that I want to cover. Also, I want to talk about that FOMC meeting coming up just briefly. So FOMC results that we get, what we're looking for is 3 or more rate cuts to happen during 2024. The markets would put that in a very favorable light to see that sort of bullishness come out. However, if we get 2 or fewer from that by the end of 2024, that could be bearish for the markets and that could send them downward. At least that's my take on it. We also want to look at 2025 and 2026's numbers when that summary of economic projections comes out. And then, of course, the tone at which Jerome Powell comes out and speaks to us, that's also going to matter as well. So expect a lot of volatility, especially towards the afternoon when we get around that 1 to 1:30 time. Prior to those results coming out at 2, and then probably likely some more volatility to follow. I wouldn't be surprised to see a drawdown in the markets happen during that time. Let's put up SPY, then we'll put up QQQ, and then I also have NVIDIA to update on Tesla, and then Intel is also worth talking about, so I'll put that up as well. So here we go. We got SPY. Yesterday I talked about a head and shoulders. We came off this trend line here. You can see it held for us. We got a nice strong bounce off of that in the pre-market hours this morning. Is it possible that this shoulder that we see right here should be more up this way because it's still pretty much even with what we have over there? Or is it going to be refuted and then we have to watch for whether or not we break this resistance up at 518, which is where we saw that previous top take place. Putting in a higher high could be really good for the market, showing further upside could take place. Failing to break that high and sending us back down, will we bounce off the trend line, find that support with a higher low? Or will we break down through it, and then we have to look and see if we come out even with the previous low, or if we break down even lower. So we would need to watch where these peaks and where these valleys come in to tell us a little bit more about the further expectation for market direction. And I will say that right now you can see the sideways movement that we've gotten, that there is a lot of question that's taking place in the markets for which way we're going to see that move happen. Moving over to QQQ. This descending triangle pattern that you see on this 4-hour chart, you can see we're peekabooing up over it right now. Let's drop down to the 1 hour to get a little bit finer detail, and you can see more recently between the 6 and 7 o'clock hours what we have taken place to break above that trend line. And like I said about the SPY, we want to watch where this high ends up for us. We also have this resistance right at about 440, and remember these are pre-market hours. Relatively low volume. We want to see what happens. We could get that continuation that pushes us up higher. But like I said, today should be a volatile day in the market. So we need to be on the lookout for what exactly could come our way. And I will say that this range that I had 433.50 marked. We sold down to that by market open, bounced strongly off of that one, possibly creating a double bottom for us, which could be a very bullish sign moving forward for the markets as well. NVIDIA, I said, was in control of this thing. I believe that a lot of what we saw was based off the strength of what we saw in returning to NVIDIA. I said 900 is going to be that line. Look at that peekaboo up above 900. If you watch my previous video, I said that's going to be critical for us. We could possibly find some strong resistance there. We hit it, came off of it, and now we need to see. NVIDIA, I think, is most definitely still in a large part of control for what happens with what we see in the NASDAQ 100 with QQQ. Moving over to Tesla, we saw this bearish flag pattern play out for us, leading down to a double bottom off this, off this bottom trend line, came up and retested the trend line from the bearish flag pattern. And so we're going to have to see where that goes next. You can see that it also almost came back down to support at about 166, 167, and now it's trailing slowly back upwards from there. Now we have deliveries coming up for Tesla. I think some of those lower deliveries that are expected have already been priced in. And so I think that there's going to be likely some sideways and sluggish movement for Tesla. I think there's going to be some volatility that happens in there as well, some to the upside, some to the downside. Breaking back up above this trend line is going to be enormous for Tesla, so I'm going to be watching for that. Breaking back solidly above 175 into 180 would also be a very bullish thing. Failing to break strongly above 175, it could be a bearish thing for us. So we have to be on the lookout for that to see if we have any sort of continuation. If I were to draw one other trend line, it would probably be right across here that we need to see what happens, and that we could look for that rejection to come off of that trend line and see what happens if we're going to squeeze in between there as resistance and down here at about 166.50 for support. Now finally, Intel. What we can see in the pre-market hours, if I zoom in, you can see that there was some excitement coming in, and this is something I discussed over at the Discord, which is available through the Patreon. That link is down in the description. That I took out an options position on Intel yesterday. It got a little bit sketchy with the drop that we saw. I said I'm holding tight to this. It might be a little bit painful, but the reason why is because of the CHIPS Act funding, the $8.5 billion through the CHIPS Act that they now have earmarked for that. And then up to $20 billion, including loans. And there's also 25% tax break that could go along with it. So that call option play should work out very handsomely for Intel. Looking into that as a nice little boost to the portfolio, if you will. So guys, let me wrap this thing up here. SPY, QQQ should be a volatile day in the markets today, especially as we draw close to the FOMC meeting. It's all going to be about that summary of economic projections, and then it's going to be influenced a little bit more after that by what Jerome Powell has to say following that. And I think the direction that we see is the direction that we could go a little bit longer in the markets. So if it's to the upside, I think we could see some further upside in the markets for a little while. If it's to the downside, then I think we could see some continued downside movement, maybe into that correction type territory, that 5 to 10% from the peaks in the markets. So we need to be watching for that. I think today is going to be a critical day, like I said, and I think that really after we hear whatever the Fed has to say, then the eyes once again go back to jobs, and it's going to go back to the inflation reports that we get in the middle of April about March. And I do want to point out that on a seasonally unadjusted basis that the CPI usually comes in hottest between February and March, at least during the early part of the year, and then takes a spike again later on August through October. So it is possible that the CPI that we get in April isn't so great either, and it's something that we want to just keep in mind there. NVIDIA, I think, still very much is highly influential to what we see for the markets. So a sell-off in NVIDIA could coincide with the sell-off in the markets. A rally for NVIDIA could also coincide, especially where QQQ is involved, could lead to a further rally there as well, as further excitement for the AI space would continue. So then also Tesla, keep on watching for that. Watch those deliveries. Watch what happens with them. Missing on deliveries could be a very negative catalyst. Meeting or exceeding expectations on deliveries could be something that would be a very positive catalyst for Tesla, alleviating some of the negative sentiment that has been surrounding it recently. All right, guys, I'm going to let you go. Check out the link for the Patreon down in the description. See my buys and sells. Talk with me and my community members throughout the trading week. And then also there's a link down there if you want to learn to do technical analysis like I do and take your trading to the next level. You can do it using the link for the course down in the description. Thanks for watching, guys. I really do appreciate it. I am Dr. Stock, Doctor of Education. Remember, my friends, that learning is earning, and we'll see you in the next video.